Welcome back, Scratchers. At this point, we now have our plane and our enemy, when they collide, disappearing. That's not terribly satisfying. What we really want to see is an explosion. To make an explosion, we need a visual representation, i.e. a sprite, which we actually have this large explosion, and if we look in there, we can see that we have 7 frames as costumes of an explosion kind of spreading and fading away. We also want an explosion sound. So I've actually created an explosion sound that I like. I've downloaded it. Let's go ahead and add that to our sounds palette. So I'll come over to the sounds here, upload sound, find that sound in my downloads. And now I have an explosion sound that I can play as well. With those in mind, now we need to go ahead and create our explosion. We look back at our looks menu. We can switch our costume. Let's go ahead and make sure that we always start with the very first one. And then we want to cycle through the rest of those costumes. And we can just use the next costume. Now there's a total of 7 costumes, which means I need to cycle through 6 of them because we'll start with the first costume. And then we can do the next 6. And we can actually use a repeat block to say, okay, start with costume 1, then switch to costume 2, then switch to costume 3, costume 4, costume 5, costume 6, all the way to the last costume. At that point, we probably want to hide the explosion sprite because we're done with it. We also want to play our sound for our explosion, which we have. And if you remember, we talked earlier about the play sound until done versus start sound. Well, we want our explosion to still be playing as we're switching costumes. So it makes, we really need to have that just be start sound. If we do the play sound, that means we're going to play the entire explosion and then we're going to start switching costumes, which is not what we want in this case. And we also want this explosion to be located where our plane is. We learned this trick earlier when we were putting the bullets where the plane is, that we can go to the motion menu and say go to, and pick a specific sprite we want it to go to. So in this case, the P38, because that's what's blowing up. And then we also want to add a show in our looks menu. Make sure that after we have gone to that position, we appear there. And actually, we want that show to be after we switch the costume. So make sure that we're starting with the first costume, then appear, and then switch through the costumes quickly, and then hide. And that whole time we're going to play our explosion sound. And then the question is, when do we want to do this? And how do we let this explosion sprite know it's time to actually show up? So what we need is an event that we can tell our game that the player has just died. Now, there are these 3 blocks here that allow us to create our own custom events. And that's actually what we're going to use. So we can come in here and create a new message to say player died. When I receive this message, I'm going to have my explosion pop up around my plane, and I'm going to have my plane ideally disappear. And then if we go back to our P38, when we get hit, we want to send that message. And there's 2 options here. We can broadcast the message, or we can broadcast and wait. The and wait means that we're going to let that explosion do its full task before we come back to this sprite. We want to just broadcast the message. Well, actually, yeah, we could go ahead and broadcast and wait. If we do broadcast and wait, we need to make sure that we do this after the hide. So we hide our plane, immediately have the explosion appear. Let's see how that looks. There we have a nice explosion. Both planes disappear in that fiery explosion. We have the explosion sound. That feels a lot better.